further ado, let's begin. And biases influence various aspects of life, from identity to boardrooms, social circles, and beyond. As we rebuild the post COVID world, these biases can influence judgment and even the hiring process, specifically when it comes to gender. And the challenges are many, and it is important that we look beyond gender biases and celebrate the unique contributions that each person can make to organizations. And we must break the barriers set by gender biases, engage in dialogue, and realize that differences are what make for inclusive and enriching workplaces, and ultimately a future marked by progress. And today's roundtable discussion will examine the techniques we can use to break gender bias, along with entire career pathway, and subsequently close the leadership gap. And the key discussion points we that will be discussed today is the identification of biases and the creation of frameworks to build biasless workplaces that bring together a multitude of skills and experiences to promote organizational growth, improve well-being, and enhance employee and client retention. So, how can cultivating growth mindsets create opportunities that can tip the balance in favor of women and career success? And how do you close the leadership gap in the workplace by disrupting the status quo? And to address these points and more, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the roundtable moderator, Ms. Nina Michaels Kim. And Nina is IMA's Director of Partnerships, Japan and Korea. And previously, she established the IMA Europe office and has founded the IMA Switzerland chapter. She has spoken at and served as facilitator at numerous conferences and events across the world and is a regular author of articles and blogs. And Nina is also an entrepreneur and co-founder at starlingpartners.com, a Zurich-based consultancy. And prior to starting her own business, she worked for over 13 years as a finance professional in the pharmaceutical industry and has worked in Japan, the US, and Switzerland. And she holds a bachelor's in international relations from Pomona College in California and a master's in foreign service from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And it is now my pleasure to bring on Nina for the roundtable. And Nina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As you may know, this webinar is part of a global series. It's part of IMA's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DE&I. And not only does IMA publish important research, which you may have heard from our press releases, but we also create opportunities such as this to discuss, exchange ideas, and raise awareness on bias. And that is one of the main goals for today's session. Mentioned before, this is part of a global women's leadership series of roundtables. It started out in India on May 9th, and last week it was held by our colleagues in the Middle East. And today, our roundtable featuring Asia Pacific speakers is the third of the series. And next week, the series will conclude with a roundtable from our colleagues in Europe on May 31st. Today's session features an amazing group of women, and I'm so honored to be the moderator. And they are all high performers in finance and accounting, all certified management accountants, USCMAs, and they are transforming, breaking the bias on a daily basis. So before we start the roundtable, I would like to briefly introduce our panelists, starting in alphabetical order by last name, which coincidentally is also the alphabetical order of the country that they reside in. So joining us from Sydney, Australia is Mrs. Jane Sarah Lott. She is a results-oriented and commercially astute financial professional with over 12 years in financial management and analysis, with her extensive background working in finance for blue chip multinational organizations such as Verizon, TTC, Chevron, and Ernst & Young. She brings diverse perspectives and a strong understanding of best practice financial management. In addition to her U.S. CMA, she also received her graduate diploma of Chartered Accounting from the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. Passionate about continuous learning, she became a Microsoft Certified Data Analyst Associate and TIBCO Certified Professional on Spotfire. Jane holds a Bachelor of Science in Accountancy degree from the University Santo Tomas from the Philippines, graduating magna cum laude. Hi, Jane. Welcome to the program.
Hello, Nina. Very excited to be here.
Great. So our next panelist, Ms. Ai Ono, is joining us from Tokyo, Japan. She has almost 10 years of experience working in financial planning and analysis, FP&A. Currently, she is an associate director of the FP&A team of CBRE Kabushiki Kaisha, the Japanese arm of CBRE Group, the world's largest commercial real estate services and investment company. In CBRE Kabushiki Kaisha, she has covered a variety of roles, including accounting and financial reporting. Her most recent achievement is the implementation of cloud-based corporate performance management software. A newly minted US CMA since March of this year. Congratulations again. She also holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from the Fox School of Business at Temple University. Hi, Ono-san. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Nina-san. It's great to be here today.
Okay, last but not least is our third panelist, Ms. Dai Eugene, based in Singapore. She serves as Senior Finance Analyst within the Treasury Department in Johnson & Johnson, J&J. Since assuming her position in 2019, Eugene has been a strategic business partner for the affiliates in Asia Pacific regarding Treasury-related matters and leads the budgeting and financial closing of the Treasury Department. As a strong believer in diversity and inclusion at the workplace, she is a board member of an analyst forum that we'll hear more about later, and she is dedicated to protect the interest of all analysts from any form of bias. Eugene passed both CMA exams in one sitting in 2018, earning our gold medal for the highest exam score in that testing period. She holds a Bachelor of Business Administration and Accountancy with distinction from the National University of Singapore and has completed J&J's Finance Leadership Development Program. In 2020, she was part of a group of volunteers to establish the IMA Singapore chapter. Hi, Eugene. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Nina. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so honored to be with you guys all. Let's get started. So one thing I wanted to talk about is just about what the current status in each of the countries that you currently reside in. So, for example, as you may have known, IMA and Cal CPA published a report last year on the U.S. accounting profession, the current status, and there it found that at less than 14% of Fortune 500 CFOs are women. So, despite the focus on DE&I topics that we always hear about, the current status is still kind of dismal. So maybe to start off, I would first like each of the panelists to state how the situation is in whatever country you currently work and live in. Maybe give the percentage of the share of women occupying top C-level positions, and explain the current situation of gender gap and D&I situation in your country. So let's start with Jane.
Yes, so Nina, this was a very interesting question that I did some research, and what I found was quite extraordinary. So based on the annual census by the chief executive women.org, the statistics in Australia for CFOs in the ASX 200, women comprise only of about 9% back in 2017, and then it jumped slightly higher to 12% in 2018. So that's about 18 women CFOs out of 200 in 2017 and then 24 in 2018. If we look more broadly in Australia, based on the 2019 to 2020 Workplace Gender Equality Agency report, about 18.3% are women CEOs, while for the ASX 300, it's only 6%. So that 6% translates to 18, which is 1/8 out of 300. And from what we can see here, women continue to be underrepresented in senior leadership positions.
Okay, it's quite amazing to me because you would have kind of just traditionally thought that in Australia, because it's so near to New Zealand, where there's a New Zealand prime minister who is a woman, you would have thought that the results would be slightly better. But let's hear now from Ono-san on the statistics of Japan, which I personally know that it's also probably closely approaching the Australian statistics. Ono-san, could you give what you think is the current status in Japan?
Okay, let's talk about the current situation in Japan. Maybe as we know, more than US or other countries, fewer women occupying CFO or senior position in Japan, unfortunately. According to Gender Gap Index, Japan has ranked 120th among 156 countries in the Gender Gap ranking in 2021, and it was the worst among G7 countries. In addition, according to the latest survey of Takeoff Data Bank, which is one of the private survey company, women currently occupy only 8.9% of management position in Japan. But this was the highest ratio since this survey began in 2013. On the other hand, another survey said only 48.6% women were interested in receiving future promotion. Well, I'd like to say, well, regardless of gender, talented persons should be promoted and show leadership. But even my case, although I have worked at US affiliated company around 10 years, my CFO was always man. However, this is my personal view. Definitely the working environment for women is getting better and better, but it's still not easy to find female leaders. Around 2 decades ago, Japanese government had set a goal of having at least 30% of women leadership positions by the end of 2020, but still there is a huge gap between ideals and reality. Currently, the government not set a goal of 2020, it has already passed. So now it has replaced it with the phrase as soon as possible. This is the current situation in Japan.
Thank you. Yeah, I did hear about the upcoming new government laws to try to improve that situation in Japan, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Thank you, Ono-san. So maybe moving on to Eugene about the Singapore situation. I'm also curious where it lies between Australia, Japan, and Singapore.
Yes, so I am very proud to be the last one to share, but Singapore is generally very good in terms of its track records. So generally, 33%, which is 1/3 of the senior management position in Singapore, is occupied by women. So I think based on the 2022 Business Times, so it's very recent, Singapore CEOs, 13% of them are women, whereas for the CFO position, 33% of CFOs in Singapore are women, so it's 1/3. So and maybe just some sharing from my personal observation. So I work for Johnson & Johnson. It's also a US company. The Asia Pacific regional office is based in Singapore. So the out of the 3 regional CFOs who are overlooking the entire Asia Pacific business, but they are sitting in Singapore, 2 out of 3 of them are actually women. And since I joined Johnson & Johnson, up until today, all my managers are women. Yeah, and maybe just to move focus into treasury, in the Asia Pacific treasury team, the entire management are all women. So yeah, but generally from my observation for Singapore, multinational companies or those companies who are of a larger scale have more balanced male to women employee ratio as well as a management ratio, whereas those smaller companies and startup firms or family business tend to be run by men.
Okay, that's very interesting. So there seems to be a discrepancy in Singapore between family-run businesses and large MNOs or the multinational organizations. But that is so positive to hear how the gender is quite equal in Singapore, and that 2 out of 3 of your CFOs in your department are women. So that is very positive. But on the other hand, the discrepancies of Australia and Japan still is pretty dismal. And I don't know,
Yes,
amongst the, yes, would you like to say something?
sorry to
No,
disturb
please.
you, Nina. Maybe I give me around 1 minute. My computer is telling me that it's running out of battery, so I will go and grab a charger.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Anyways, I'll first discuss about the dismal things about Australia and Japan. So it was the perfect timing that Eugene had to drop off for technical issues. So let's start with Ono-san about why do you think in Japan it is so bad with the diversity? You stated the current status, but it would be great to hear your insights of what you believe are the barriers for women in Japan.
Well, sure. Maybe as you're aware, there are several reasons, but the biggest one is definitely traditional gender roles. In the past, many women are forced to choose between marriage or career. Now situation has been changed, so many women return to the office after giving birth. But again, compared to other countries, Japanese society is still conservative in some ways, with men expected to support the family and women expected to take care of the home. Because of this background, while sometimes women are discriminated against in the recruitment process, and if they're hired, they're not given the same opportunities as male employees in terms of promotion, because women are sometimes blocked from the longer term career path due to the assumption that they will quit the job after getting married and having children. Second is entry-level position recruitment process is different from other countries, but actually this idea is also coming from traditional gender roles. Well, it doesn't apply to every company, of course, but especially local Japanese companies still apply this recruiting practice. So that idea is women, when they enter the company, they have to decide whether to pursue the career track or the non-career path. And I think it's very hard for a young woman to decide from the beginning. Once they choose non-career path, they generally handle only assistant types of jobs, and their chance of promotion are limited. And another factor is in case of Japanese formal business, especially men-dominated industry like real estate, relationship building often takes place offline over drinks after work. But due to COVID-19 environment, it has been reduced, but still drinking with coworkers and bosses is considered important relationship building too.
Yeah, I also cover Korea, and that is also very important. Korea, the informal gatherings after work, but it is very difficult to do if you are responsible for children to take care of, getting dinner on the table. But it should not only be women, it should be affecting also males,
Yeah.
and taking turns is something that my husband and I try to do. Although, I mean, yes, hopefully there's really bad things about COVID, but one good thing is possibly that, the tight-knit family and then decreasing of that so that the people start thinking that that shouldn't happen every night of informal
Right.
gatherings. I'm hoping that is sort of the trend too. So it seems like Eugene is back.
Yes, just in
Okay.
time.
Okay, so maybe so it was interesting to hear from Ono-san about how the traditional gender bias still plays a lot in Japan, and that also the relationship building that takes place is all very interesting, is a barrier. And maybe you can explain, Eugene, why is it better in Singapore? Like, what is the main difference? Does that even take place? Like, how traditional gender bias is that not even there? Like, is it not expected that women be the sole child care person in a family? Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, okay. So when I first see this question, or rather when I first see this discrepancy between like the amount of senior leaders in Japan versus the percentage of senior leaders who are women in Singapore, uh, I am also very surprised, like why is Singapore the percentage slightly better? So I tried to do some research, and the first point that I discover, I am not sure whether Japan really has such a difference from Singapore, but the first point I discovered is that women in Singapore are generally very well educated. In fact, sometimes the number of university graduates is the percentage is higher for women than men. So I think in 2017, 53% of the university graduates in that year are female, whereas yeah, for 47% are men. Same thing is for the age group of 25 years old to 34 years old, so the younger generation, 90.2% of women and 90% of men have received secondary or tertiary has received post-secondary or tertiary qualification in Singapore. So as you can tell here, education levels are very balanced between men and women in Singapore. In fact, women sometimes receive even more education than men. So because women are educated, most of us tend to have the mindset that we will have something to pursue. We want to have a career. We have our goals. We have our dream, and therefore it makes it makes it harder for us to give up on our career for the family. So when so sorry, let me just close the IM. Yeah, so when it comes to the workplace, you observe that women even though we have family commitments or we face some discrimination, but because of the amount of education we receive, that most of the time we actually tend to brave on at the workplace. And then on top of that, actually, in fact, it's the tone and the talk from Singapore government that is actually eliminating the discrimination and bias against women. So the amount of maternity and family support given to working mothers is very sufficient by the Singapore government. You have 16 weeks of paid maternity leave. You have up to 6 days of paid childcare leave. Yeah, so and at the same time, government actually kind of encourage, but I would say enforce companies that are based in Singapore to apply certain family-friendly policies. For example, a flexible work arrangement. It's been there even since before COVID. Support schemes for working mothers, and some companies even have extended childcare leaves, as well as the government up till they target by the end of 2025, they are targeting to have more than 200,000 full day childcare centers to house all the kids so that women can work. And the third factor that is a factor that I observe from Singapore society. Generally, we recognize that family is not just the responsibility of women, it is also the responsibility of men. So there's a lot of campaigns encouraging active fatherhood. You also see that, for example, after work gatherings, it's not just over drinks. just a few men gathering and over drinks, but it can also be a few women gathering and over drinks. So you might question, if women, they have after a gathering, they go out for dinner, go out for drinks, what about their kids? So that for that night, it will be the husband taking care of the kid, not just the wife. So I think generally, because of this society mindset, it makes it easier for women to continue or pursue career progression in organizations.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It really is about this society mindset, and eliminating the bias that only women should take care of children. Because, you gave the examples of these generous childcare in Singapore, but actually, in Japan, it is one of the most generous, according to law, of giving childcare leave. So, it's 12 months for working parents. It's even male employees will be entitled to 4 weeks, and starting in October this year. And but the problem is, according to my research, less than 13% of fathers actually take paternity leave, even though they are entitled to at least 2 works currently, and then it would be 4 weeks in October. And now the Japanese government is starting also a campaign, and even I saw a video, Eugene, about your company J&J in Japan has a big video out there about of one male employee who decided to take paternity leave and how much it was good for him, and etc. So there's just this campaign that's starting right now. I mean, I hope it will improve, but compared to the 13% of fathers in Japan that took the paternity leave in 2020, it was 82% of women who had to take maternity leave. So you can see that it's not equal at all. But I think that some of that must be biased. So, well, it really is these biases that impact, especially in Japan. And, maybe Ono-san, you could share some other negative experiences that you personally have experienced or others that you witnessed. Maybe kind of, if you're comfortable with sharing a negative example of gender bias that you experienced, Ono-san.
Sure, yeah, I have some, but since time is limited today, I would like to share with you two experiences. Well, both were happened almost 15 years ago when I returned to Japan after graduating from college in US. So I hope things are better now. One was when I was interviewing for a job. Several companies asked me if I wanted to work after marriage. Well, it was a pretty common question in Japan at the time. Well, I just answered, yes, of course. Well, I assume not only myself, but also most women candidates answered yes for these types of questions because we want to get offer, right? So I was not sure why they always ask these questions. But I also aware they didn't ask the same question to men. I think it's better that they just ask me like, please tell me your future career plan or something like that. And another story is after joining the company, I attended the seminar on business manners. It was a small class, only 5 people joined, and out of 5, I was only woman. During the lecture, the instructor only asked me to practice serving a tea when someone visited the office. Then I asked her, excuse me, why I only have to practice this? She told me, oh, because you're a woman. It's better for you to practice it now.
Wow, that was
Wow.
a woman manager
Yeah,
doing that to you?
woman instructor.
That or women instructor. But see, that is also, yeah, I hope that has changed. This is the
Mhm.
reason for this too. I mean, listening to the Indian and Middle East discussions too, it really does need to be women managers that help other and lift up other women. But please continue.
Okay. Well, at the time I was young, I was shy. For some reasons, couldn't complain. I couldn't say anything in front to that person, but I felt, that treatment was unfair in that situation. And after return to the office, I shared this experience with my manager and my boss, and he said, well, I understand your thought, but still there is a stereotype that assistant job is for women. So I don't have specific answer how to overcome these experiences, but at least I could learn unconscious bias exists everywhere. Both interviewer and seminar instructor words were not intentionally, but it was coming from their stereotype. So it's necessary to be aware of your own biases. Otherwise, bias can lead people to treat others unfairly.
Yeah, no, it's really sad to hear about that. And, I've experienced myself those kind of things, and I really appreciate you sharing that, Ono-san. But I mm, feel like it was a long time ago when I experienced those kind of things, and I hope that it's improved, but I'm listening that it's still not really improved yet. This bias is that people think that only women should be serving tea or taking notes or acting as a secretary or bringing the coffee. So that's very depressing. And maybe I would like to try to see if we have some positive experience on bias that possibly maybe Jane, maybe you can start off and give us a positive experience that occurred in your career that helped you, where you felt like you were supported.
Definitely, Nina. Although I do feel sad whenever I hear stories about disparities and inequalities. As for me, I really feel very fortunate in my career. So, for example, when I was in the Philippines, I've always wanted to relocate to Australia. And this happened about maybe 5.5 years ago. And what happened was that opportunity opened up for me when my permanent resident visa got approved for Australia. And then I was working for a company called T-Tech, which is an American multinational company on customer experience technology. And what happened was I was having this conversation with a senior executive who was based in the US. And then I told him about my plans of moving to Australia. And then after that, he made a personal introduction to someone within the business who was handling the Australian operations. And then from that personal introduction, that led to job interviews for a role based in Sydney with people in Australia. And then that led to a job offer, and then eventually landing my first role here in Sydney, making my move, which was really crazy, but also exciting at the same time. Feel very supported. So what did I learn from that experience? I realized that it's very important to find and have sponsors and champions who are prepared to go out on a limb for you and open doors for your career.
Yeah, that word sponsors and champions came out also in the other roundtables. And, that is something that is also mentioned in the reports. In addition to mentors, women also need to have sponsors and champions, like you said. And, I've said this before, but back in my days, when I was first starting out, I didn't even know about the term sponsors and how important it was to get sponsors. So I'm so good that I'm so glad that we're now using this language and helping younger women who are just starting out in their career to look for sponsors in addition to mentors, because that is so important. And I'm really glad that you shared that, Jane. What about Eugene? Maybe you can talk about how a positive experience that you had that maybe would help other women on this roundtable participating.
Yeah, so I guess I am the lucky one. I mean, right after I graduate, I joined Johnson and Johnson. Uh, I kind of took gender equality and bias-free working environment as I kind of took it for granted. Yeah, so to me it's like cause my workplace on normally so far I have not seen any like really gender inequality or biased behavior occurring. But maybe let me share one experience, not by me, but by a colleague who this is a very positive experience, who got supported to come back to work after staying at home for a few years. So Johnson & Johnson is actually very supportive of mothers who are returning back to the workplace. So my colleague, I met her after she joined Johnson & Johnson. She was explaining how she spent a few years at home and she found it very challenging to find a job afterwards. And Johnson & Johnson hired her and gave her the opportunity, ease her back into the working environment, gave her the enough support so that she excel at her work. And not to mention that within these few years that I personally know her, she actually applied to my senior management team asking for a 1 year sabbatical leave so that she can take her son for the primary six school leaving examination. So it's one of a very big examination in Singapore. So she tried to apply for sabbatical leave. She thought she would be rejected, but actually she was encouraged. So she was told that your son's exam is more important. Please take this year off. We will retain the position for you after your son finish his exam. You can still come
Wow.
back to this position and work. Yeah, so I guess I kind of took this kind of gender bias-free environment for granted. So to me, this is normal. So when I hear of all the gender bias, the treatments, actually, I sometimes I get very angry about it.
Yeah, I know, especially because of the when women are well educated like yourselves, well established, working really hard, it is despairing to hear about this. But I mean, thank God that, your story and then Jane's story too proves that, there are people who support women. And it's so important to have these sponsors or even the whole culture at a company that supports women and men who want to take time off too. It could have been the father who wanted to say, I want to support the son to complete this, and that should be taking more and more, right? That more males and fathers should take time off to do that kind of stuff. Then it would equal out a lot of the gender gap, in my opinion. But very interesting to hear from both of you, for all of you, for the three of you, on the different experiences with bias that you have seen or witnessed or experienced. So maybe let's move to a little bit more positive and maybe some learnings or some things that you would like to inform the audience about, because all three of you are successful women, overcome if you have experienced gender bias, or have been supported by sponsors, and you're standing here as established women in finance and accounting. Maybe could you have some recommendations that you would like to share to the audience, or even you can even use the platform to say what other things are necessary for women to rise to the top. Um, Maybe we could start with Jane.
Yes, Nina, I actually feel very honored to be invited to speak as a panelist today. And so, in terms of my career, I do have the top three things that I have learned that I can share with the audience. So the first one would be something related to what I've said earlier, would be having sponsors um, in our career who could support us to move forward as we become more successful. And the second idea, which is closely related to the first one, would be to be willing to do the hard work necessary to meet that opportunity. So since the senior executive, he has known me for about 3 years supporting his portfolio for Asia Pacific, and he knows the work that I do. And that was why he was confident in making that recommendation to that person, because whenever someone recommends you for something, that person is putting his credibility on the line. So we don't want to have that kind of like challenge. And then the third one would be having a support group of successful women around us who are in a similar journey, because as they say, we are the average of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. So
I
those are the
really
three
like
ones for
those.
me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really like those points. And, some of them have also came up in the Middle East roundtable, which I attended. And so you see that doesn't matter wherever you're located, no matter where you're located geographically, some of these points are still relevant for everyone around the world. So the importance of sponsors, willing to do the hard work, and that is actually what one of the panelists in the Middle East said is, it depends on you, your personality, you, your traits, your attitude. That is also very important. And then this support group network of women that also came up, and I really do really, cherish that, or I would like to support that. And IMA is this by these women leaders ship series, and which we do. These roundtables are the first time, these virtual roundtables, but we do have women leadership series live meetings. They've occurred in New York and Europe, and I believe through this network we should keep this going. I hope we can do this, and especially if you do not have such a support group in your companies. Unlike Eugene, seems like Ono-san was saying, real estate is a male-dominated thing. Maybe you don't have people to share. I hope you can always come to us. And another webinar that I attended, it was very interesting. It was in Japan, and the general manager was it was Baxter, one of our corporate clients in IMA, and the general manager said this term, woo mentors, right? Women, he combined women and mentors. And I asked him, can I use that? He said, yes, you could go ahead. But really, it's like this, there's been a question, and we can address it later. Keep the questions going, audience. Just type it into the Q&A, and I'll answer them later. But one thing I wanted to say is that, women supporting women, and then to be womentor. I love that term, and I think it's really good points, Jane. Maybe we should move to Ono-san. Could you have any recommendations that you would like to state, or some improvements to the system?
Well, for my recommendation, while sharing your future career plan with your boss as well as CFO is really important, especially if you want to become a manager or leadership position in accounting or finance field. Well, if your boss knows your thought, a chance will come around for you. And important thing is more easily to get the support from your boss. In my current company, all employees have to submit career development plan every year, which is asking about the midterm and long-term career plan. Well, actually has a little pleasure because not only my boss or CFO, but CEO review it. And another issue is sometimes I forgot what I answered in the previous year, although they always ask us the same questions. But I'm sure I always answer yes for the specific question. That question is, do you want to be in a managerial position? And after submission of my career plan, my previous CFO gave me some advice on career advancement. So actually study for the CMA exam was one of his recommendations too. Of course, it was not only a reason that I promoted. Other day, suddenly my previous manager left from the company, and it was not easy to find a suitable person immediately. And also, company wanted to reduce the gender gap of leadership position recently. So anyway, fortunately, I could promote because of many factors. So from my recommendation is sharing your future career path with your boss, and having the support from your organization is really important key.
I agree. No, I think that's a very good recommendation. And, again, referring back to the other roundtables in this series, don't be shy about your career plans. That's very, some people said, like, nature of women is not to toot our horn too much, right, compared to the
Right.
traditional male. And so they were talking about, for example, a woman will say it takes a lot of hard work and determination and accomplishment and education before a woman would be very confident, say, yes, I can take that job. And then a male can say that much sooner in their career development and before they obtained all the success that we think we need to have before we're able to be confident enough to say that I would like to be the CFO in the future, right? So that is something that was also remarked in the Middle East roundtable. And Ono-san, you put it really also succinctly that put it in your career plan, put it in writing, make it known. That is a very good input. And, coincidentally, I had also, when I was in my career in Merck or MSD, my supervisor also said, get the CMA established for your career path in the future. And also I have to be like really saying it right from the beginning that this is what I want to do. So that's very good input. And maybe Eugene, would you like to say something about this too, or should we just
Yeah, sure,
yes.
definitely. Yeah, so basically, as a woman, but because I am still single, so no family commitments yet. So I would like to share like what I observed from my colleagues who, have elderly to take care of, have kids to take care of, and have a huge group of family that they have commitments on. How I observe that they are managing between work and their family. So one concrete action that I see them taking is actually just to be strong. So sometimes your work commitments together with your family commitments can come in at the same time, and everything can seem very overwhelming. But what it takes is to really stay calm. And tackle the things one at a time so that you get everything resolved. And because there are moments that I can see that they feel like giving up, but they brave on, and their persistence earn them where they are in the career right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's what people said too. And it was very interesting, like that when you're employee, maybe you might think, oh, I'm not sure if I could do it now. Also, with all the commitments I have, you mentioned too, elderly care is also very important. It's not just childcare. And but when your support says, yes, you can do it, that would be so very helpful to have, right? So I think that is wonderful to have that kind of support. And it's a good input from you, Eugene. I know we've talked a lot about the J&Js, how supportive J&J is. I wonder if maybe we come back to that again later, but maybe Jane could say something a little bit about what other things that your current or previous employers are doing to nurture bias-free workplaces and corporate cultures. Any good strategies from the employer side, because that's what we should also be doing as part of this panel discussion, to have
Um,
and create bias-free spaces. Please go ahead, Jane.
Yes, definitely, Nina. So, based on my research, what I've found is that when companies have policies and strategies to attract and retain um, a diverse workforce, what happens is it has a very good impact on the bottom line profitability, and that is based on the 2020 report by McKinsey about diversity wins. And what I've found is that companies in the top quartile of gender diversity in executive teams were more likely to experience above average profitability than in its peer companies in the fourth quartile. So that was something that I found very interesting. With regards to the company I'm currently working for now, which is Verizon, I'm just really excited because there's a lot of traction and understanding with regards to the importance of DE&I, and how it demonstrates its commitment is through various strategies so that it could attract top talent The top, there are quite a lot, but the top three that stood out for me would be first, the employee resource groups. And these are groups which provide a forum for both professional and personal development. Two of those that stood out for me was WAVE, which is a Women's Association of Verizon Employees, and PACT, which would be for parents and caregivers together. The second one, because I like listening to podcasts, would be Lifting Up. And this would be about stories from Verizon women leaders, sharing their stories and the wisdom that they've gotten to get to where they are. And the third would be commitment to pay equity. This one stood out for me because according to the Workplace Gender Equity Agency report, there's on average a 13.8% gender salary gap. And then when you go up into the management gender salary pay gap is about 23.3%. So the top three: employee resource groups, the podcast of lifting up, and commitment to the pay equity.
Very nice to hear about all those initiatives that are ongoing, Jane. Thank you for sharing that. And I don't know if we have a little bit more time for Eugene to maybe add from other policies or other concrete examples to create a safe and open space that that have not been covered yet. Would you like to share some from your side, Eugene?
Yeah, so I think J&J is a company that thinks about diversity and inclusion. So it's not just about gender bias, but it's about bias in all different aspects. So basically, because of this strong tone at the top, we can comfortably say that, like, for example, promotion opportunities is fair for everyone, no matter who you are or what you are. Yeah, and then we have like something like annual diversity and inclusion week, whereby different self-help groups, for example, the LGBT self-help groups or the women self-help groups or the mother self-help groups, they will organize talks and panel discussions, something like what we are doing now, but we invite some female CFO to share their career experience to everyone else. So to all the rest of the employees, to tell us how if we want to be like them, this is what we need to do. Yeah, so and also J&J give a lot of flexible working arrangement to working mothers. So working from home did not just start from COVID. It was already there way before COVID. If you have family commitments, just communicate with your manager, and you can always arrange your work flexibly so that you can take care of your family. So and also actually Johnson and Johnson pay you subsidize your delivery fee. So if you want to be a mother, if you give birth, you get money. Yeah, so basically it's a lot of actions in place to let us feel that women is supported in the workplace. There is no biasness. Every employee should be treated equally. This kind of words are actually pasted everywhere in the company, in the office. Yeah, so I guess it's this kind of environment that make all of us feel safe.
I like that. Yeah. So it's tone at the top and then even following through, right?
Yeah.
That's very important. Um, and creating the safe space. I love that. I love to hear that there are people who are, really experiencing a safe environment to be themselves, and really embracing diverse cultures and um, trying to even improve on that. That's wonderful to hear. Um, and I think we still have, before we have to go to the Q&A, I've seen some good questions. Thank you so much for continue to send that to us, audience. If you want us to cover something that you haven't heard yet. So maybe we'll start, have two more questions before we go to the Q&A on our panel, our roundtable. And maybe I'll start with Jane. Maybe you could be willing to share some of what you yourself are contributing to diversity, equity, and initiatives in your company? I'm sorry, diverse DE and I, which the I stands for inclusivity. So diverse, equity, and inclusivity initiatives, and how you're raising awareness at your own company or training within your team or company. Jane?
Yes, Nina. Interestingly, this question is actually like a call out for me because I've been working remotely most of the time, and I haven't been as active as I wanted to be internally. Although externally, I've been much more active at that. So at the moment, I am part of a group of executive women here in Australia under Amanda Bleesing's She Suite Club, which values diversity, equity, inclusion, and women empowerment. Because I do believe that when women support each other, we all win.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. Yeah, I want to do more about that myself. It's actually like a little bit these questions and this roundtable is like, oh yeah, I need to make sure that I'm doing more of this. And especially with COVID, it is harder to participate. That is very interesting. The She Suite Club, yeah, with it's a very interesting initiative, Jane. And Eugene, we mentioned this before, but could you a little bit elaborate on the diversity and inclusivity group that you're part of?
Yeah, so I am currently part of the Analyst Forum. So it is actually a self-help group for all analysts within for all treasury analysts within Johnson & Johnson, approximately 100 of us. So yeah, just this 100 of us. So this group does not specifically target a gender inclusivity, but it broadly targets the idea of diversity and inclusion of all employees. These self-help groups, we organize activities to bond all the analysts together, to help the analysts to network, as well as we are there to help all the treasury analysts whenever they have questions or concerns or issues. If they find that it's challenging to go directly to the manager, they can speak to the six of us globally. So there's six of us on the board. We are actually based in 4 different regions, so that the employees in each region can approach the specific one of us directly for help if they need to. Yeah, so some of the activities we do, for example, like a domino game whereby we randomly group people up into groups and they are supposed to randomly speak to one of their colleagues in the group, and after that the colleague will speak to the next colleague in the group, and so this is the kind of like blind networking that we do for them, so that so as to bond the treasury analyst community. Yeah, so as well as we organize town halls 2 times annually, and there are breakout rooms whereby we either conduct survey or we conduct like interviews of all the analysts to check with them if they have any questions or concerns. And because it's breakout rooms, the group size is very small, they are tend to more comfortable to speak up.
Well, I really like that initiative to protect women and the analysts, it's all analysts, to make sure that they're free from bias. And in a small environment, you will feel more comfortable to speak about. And it's sort of a neutral body, which is also very good. That's wonderful to hear of. And as I mentioned before, we're kind of coming to the end of this panel discussion. And before we go to the Q&A session to answer the questions from the audience, could we maybe go one by one and summarize like the take-home points or recommendations that you would like to mention on what else we as a society or as a company or as IMA or all women, what we can do to create a bias-less environment. And maybe we'll go with Ono-san. Could you maybe start to discuss your final take-home point recommendation?
Again, unfortunately, unconscious bias exists everywhere. but it's our responsibility to make sure we don't unconsciously act on them. Recognizing the importance of diversity is a first step to build an equal, diverse, and inclusive workplace. I think attending diversity events like today or take some training of awareness is one of the steps to build a biasless environment. Well, today I shared the current situation of Japanese society or shared my negative experiences, but I'd like to note that the working environment for women is definitely getting better. To become more biasless environment, mindset change for both men and women is really important key, I think. As I introduced, still many people in Japan, including women, believe taking care of home is women's job. Unless this mentality changes, the environment for working women will remain full of obstacles. Of course, company or government supports are necessary, but more than that, each of them try to improve the situation proactively and aware that diversity is really important.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ono-san. The mindset change, it was also mentioned by Eugene, but I hope in Japan and Korea and other places that it would really approach more like the Singapore example where we have shared that it's equal responsibility, not just women to take care of the elderly and children. And maybe now Jane, if you can share your final take-home points before we move to Q&A.
So I understand that, we are all biased and we cannot see our biases because they help us make fast decisions and that can perpetuate. So I believe that the first step is self-awareness, being self-aware and conscious of what those biases are. And then second would be the importance of the processes and strategies within the company that promote the values of inclusivity and that mitigate those biases.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Very well said. And Eugene, let's conclude with you and then move to answer the audience questions. Do you have any take-home points from your side?
Yes, so to conclude, actually, I would say for everyone here, to mitigate gender bias or any form of bias at workplace, maybe start with yourself. Recognize, I think my point is a bit similar to Arnold-san. So recognize that we might subconsciously make some bias comments or thoughts to certain group of people. Tell yourself don't do this. So just make a conscious effort not to be biased for yourself first before we hope that the rest of the society not to be biased. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for this discussion. I've really enjoyed myself. But let's now try to see if we could answer the interesting questions that we've been receiving from the audience. One of this is something we've mentioned before. Thank you so much for a question that we received from Syed. I've seen women acting differently from men and avoiding certain careers and certain activities in work or other environments and plainly saying we are women. And so they're making a barrier themselves. So how can we demolish, destroy these barriers if women themselves act this way? So we've sort of mentioned this, had some recommendations about this, but would someone, one of the panelists would like to take this question? Women acting differently to other women.
Actually, personally, I think that for those who say that I'm a woman, so this is not suitable for me, actually the person just mean that this is not suitable for me. So because if you are a woman and this is your goal or this is your dream, you will just go and pursue it. But if you use your gender as an excuse for not pursuing something, then maybe it's just because you don't want it that much, or you are not confident you can do it. So for those women having this kind of mindset, maybe I would say be more confident. but be more confident, believe in yourself that you can do it. But for the rest of us who hear this kind of self-induced biasness, maybe let's believe that this is just a minority.
Agreed. I like that. Overcome self-induced biases. And another thing I wanted to say is that there is a very conscious reason why IMA has diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the E that stands for equity doesn't stand for equality. It's about equity, because treating everybody as equal is actually not really fair when the basis is not the same. So there, I want to counterbalance that and say that you for some women, perhaps like you had to take a break because of nursing and breastfeeding, which has to be done by women. That you cannot just treat everybody at weak. You have to be equitable about that. So it is there is still a reason why women need to bond together for some reasons, right? So it's very interesting is to be equitable and hopefully bond together with each other, and not be inequitable to all women. So I hope we were able to sort of answer that. It's a very difficult thing because you don't want to self-induce any bias yourself. You have to be aggressive and take all of the career opportunities that are offered to you, but also stand up for your right? Like I really stood up when I was there, and I really appreciate that. That was an MSD. They gave me an office where I could, I could go to the details, but breast pump and all this kind of stuff. But that was very, very positive for me, and that's why I was able to continue in my career and was even able promoted even in that state. So I think it is something that you it's a balance, right? You have to stand up, but also not self-induce the bias. So okay, I hope I was able to answer that. The next question I received, and thank you, Eugene, for for being brave and contributing for your answer too. So the next question is from Kizel. What do you think is the greatest edge of a woman in a competitive corporate workplace, especially for women who are just starting out, like as an entry-level employees? Okay, this is very interesting. What is, and we're also discussing that during our rehearsal and stuff. What do you think is the greatest edge of a woman in a competitive corporate working place? So maybe would somebody care to talk about this? One of the panelists, what's especially entry level employees? I think we've lost Eugene.
Yes, I realized
Yeah,
my
but
video.
no, I think there's some a little bit technical thing. But would anybody would like to? It might be so kind of what we just concluded, but the greatest edge of a woman. We said it before, and maybe if I would just get the conversation started, it was about the high education, right? We also said that the Eugene mentioned how in Singapore, many women are educated very at a high level, even higher than women. So, and it is actually shown that possibly that women are I see it actually with my teenagers too a little bit, but like the more women do make the entrance exams and are studious, so that could be one of the first entry level to that we need to have, or that we at the entry level to be considered on a resume, that you have these high competences. Any other input from the panelists? What is the
Um,
greatest edge of a woman in a competitive corporate workplace?
I do have something to share, Nina, and I do agree about education, getting yourself educated and getting the necessary skills um, um, that is needed by the marketplace at the moment. Another two other things that I feel that are important would be first is clarity, really understanding what do you want from your career or and from your life in general. And the second is curiosity, because having a curious mindset of what's really available, because you don't really know things that you don't know, and you are able to learn more of that if you are curious, and then you speak with a lot of people, and from that you can change career trajectories, and then be able to pivot to interesting areas that you didn't know were possible. So those three things: education, clarity in what you want, and then third is curiosity.
Thank you, Jane, for jumping in too. I hope that we were able to answer that question, and I see that Ryan's on already here. Do we have one more some minutes to answer one more question,
Of
Ryan?
course. Let's go ahead.
Okay. So one other question that I received is the what gets measured gets improved. So would you comment on whether your company or workplace is measuring its progress, so either KPIs or capturing statistics on DE&I initiatives? Would somebody like to, maybe first, Eugene, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, so actually DE&I is in our performance review, annual performance review. How it's inside is during our annual performance review, we actually have to provide a list of names to our manager to gather stakeholder feedback. So my manager will basically send out requests to my those people who worked with me before, and the questions will include like, is Yujing inclusive during the meetings? Did she consider views from all perspective? Did she make a conscious effort to ensure that that to ensure that there is no bias occurring during the meetings, or when she's working with you, she did not treat you in any ways that is biased or make you uncomfortable. So this is part of the feedback that I get from my stakeholders, and it will be included in my year-end performance review.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and
So it's
sorry,
good.
my camera froze
No,
again.
no, but your audio was fine, at least on my end. So I really appreciate that you said that. Yeah. So I believe that this area is something that we as finance professionals, we as management accountants, we as CMAs can contribute the most, right? And this is a day-to-day thing that we can do to help improve DE&I in our companies and in society. I guess I have to go. I wanted to also ask about, is there any last minute things that the panelists would like to say before we hand over to Ryan? So for the closing?
I'd like to
Okay.
share something.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
really think the culture of inclusivity will serve as a foundation for everything else. So having that tone at the top and then support to build that kind of foundation is really important for a business.
Definitely. Uh, Thank you so much to all panelists. Thank you, Jane, and Ono-san and Eugene. And I guess I'll hand over to Ryan.
And thank you, Nina, for the very engaging and inspiring session. And once again, special thanks to our panelists, Ono-san, Yuting, and Jane, for the interesting sharing of your insights and experiences. And once again, thank you to everyone for attending this roundtable session. And I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. And please connect with IMA on our many social media platforms and click on the like button and follow us so that you can get all the latest updates in our region, including more webinars, more sessions like this, news articles, events, and much more. And on behalf of IMA, the Institute of Management Accountants, we wish you a very nice day ahead, and we will see you again soon. Thank you. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. we continue the dialogue. Join the Europe session too. I think it was so interesting to go join. They will, even if the time difference doesn't work, there'll definitely be a video put up later or something. So I think it would be very interesting to share different geography perspectives. So thank you so much again to all of our panelists, and thank you for the Southeast Asia team and Ryan.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.